And we are live. Welcome to a new episode of All Things Xbox Podcast. Once again, I have Logan with me. Logan, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good, man. Today's been a good day. It looks like, especially in Irvine, rolled out quite the welcome mat for Phil and the dignitaries.
Yeah, I obviously we're going to get into all that stuff later in the show, but it's good to have it all done. You know, we've had 20 long months online of waking up, opening no, let's call it Twitter. Opening Twitter every day and just seeing FTC if it's going to go through or not. And it's been the longest 20 months in history, but like you said before the show started, this is when the fun part starts. All the new games, all the new talk and stuff. Like going forward, it's actually going to be really exciting because anything can happen. But before we get into all that stuff, Logan, have you been playing anything interesting lately?
Yeah, I'm finishing up my Alan Wake universe playthrough before Alan Wake 2. I gotta put the pedal to the metal a little bit, but I finished Remastered. I finished American Nightmare. I'm almost done with the main campaign on Control. Then I got the two expansions, and then I'll be ready. How about you, man?
Lots of Starfield. Excuse me.
Hey, good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like for people listening, I'm still sick, so I've only been playing a little bit of gaming each day. So like Starfield for me has been a way just to zone out, and it's a good game to do that. You just land on a planet or moon, discover a base, and that like when it comes to a lot of games that have bases or outposts, like I just love going in, clearing them out. It's one of the reasons why I love Assassin's Creed, and I can just do that in Starfield, but on a moon with low gravity and guns. So it's a lot of fun. Outside of that, I've been playing Alan Wake, getting ready for the sequel. Mainly been going through American Nightmare because I played the remaster not long ago, but that game's underrated. It really is. It's about £6 on Xbox Live. It's about the same price on Steam, and it's a fun little game to go through. It does things that the main Alan Wake game doesn't do. The amount of enemies on screen can get nuts. In American Nightmare, the graphics are slightly better. Great game. And what else? Oh, a bit of Everspace too. Like that's a for people who haven't played, it's a starfighter pilot RPG where 100% of the game takes place from the seat of a starfighter. And I like Logan. I know you like that game as well because you got the physical edition, right?
Yeah, I really enjoy it. It's definitely a nice space adventure game that's different from Starfield. Like it's more enjoy the space aspects of Starfield, so it's like honed in on that with a little RPG and markets and all kinds of stuff. It's quite a blast.
Yeah, and for people that haven't played it, it's in Game Pass, Everspace 2, and what a game. Like, it's literally just an RPG, but all of the game takes place in the seat of a, starfighter. And it just reminds me of, like, the PlayStation 1 era of games where we had, like, space combat games all the time. And I've complained a lot that the space combat genre kind of died. Like, we've had indie games over the past few years, but as a genre, we don't really get them often, especially in the modern era. In the past few years, we've had Star Wars Squadrons, Chorus, and now Everspace 2, and man, they just keep getting better and better. So, highly recommend people play that. It's not a hard game; it's fairly easy. Obviously, you can change the difficulty and stuff, but yeah, good games all around. Let's get into all the topics because we have a lot to go over, and let's get into it. Okay, so I'll get this out of the way. Dead Space, the remake. It's finally going to be in Game Pass on Thursday. We briefly mentioned it on the show last week. And for people that haven't played it, incredible game. It really is. It's arguably one of the best games of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if it actually ends up being Game of the Year for a lot of outlets just because of how it evolves the first game. Like, it stays true to the first game and makes it better, which is kind of rare because sometimes with a remake they can like dumb it down, change the plot, change the characters, but they don't do that. It is purely Dead Space but better, and that's all people wanted from that. Logan, obviously you played that, right?
Yeah, it's one of the best horror games ever made. Like the original is, and then the remake is even better. It's like if, Da Vinci somehow found a way to improve the Mona Lisa, just was able to go back and with modern tech and abilities and skills just enhance it even more or bring more colors to life or something. The it's the best way to play it, and if you haven't experienced it and you're not a wuss and you like horror games, you have no excuses. Play it. It's in Game Pass now.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big issues with the first game, and if people haven't played the original, which came out in, I think it was like 2008 or 2009, um, the zero G stuff was terrible in that game. You basically did
Oh
these,
yeah.
yeah, you did these Superman jumps. So you basically aim at the wall or the ceiling, and you just jump from one place to the next. But in Dead Space 2, you were able to move around anywhere in zero G. They basically put that mechanic in the first game, and it's just so much better. You can go back to previous areas, unlock doors, bunch of new secrets in the game. The story is actually better than the original. But yeah, what can I say? Great game. Again, I think it's probably top 5 best games of the year for me. Like, if it wasn't for Starfield and Jedi Survivor, like, I think maybe Dead Space would have been like top 3 for me, top 2. But yeah, highly recommend people play that. Again, I will say this, for people that are going to play it via Game Pass, if I remember correctly, it's a fairly big download. But fortunately on Xbox, you can download games that you haven't like bought yet. So if you want to get it early, like to start downloading like tonight, go to the Xbox store, or say the Xbox Game Pass app, search a game, and you can download any game without purchasing it. So, good way about it. And I think people will need to do that for Alan Wake, because Alan Wake 2 is 82 gigabytes on Xbox. Yeah. So, yeah, big games. Anyway, Dead Space, Thursday, Game Pass. Hope people enjoy it, because, again, it literally is one of the best games of the year. You know, I'm sure everyone listening is either on Twitter or has been on Twitter in the past, and we all open up Twitter at some point and you see a developer post a still image, and that still image has a bunch of text on it. Now, we all know what that means. Logan, don't you?
I'm sorry, but this title has been delayed until
Yeah.
next year.
Yeah. It's either a game's been delayed, a game's been canned, they've kidnapped your cat. It's always something like really negative, and it's tiring. We get this all the time, you know. I think that the yellow still image from Cyberpunk is kind of like give people PTSD, because like the second you see a yellow image with text on it, it's bad news. Well, thankfully, yesterday we got a good one, and I think the game might still be in Game Pass, I'm not sure, but Aliens Fireteam Elite, one of the most underrated games of 2022. They put out one of those still images with the text on it, and I was thinking, okay, here we go. They're pulling it from the store. Sadness. And it turns out, no. The game's been a huge success. They're going to start giving out patches of most wanted features for the game, which you never see from developers. So they're giving people what they want, adding more modes, more quality of life features, and they kind of hinted at making a sequel. Because, again, it's Aliens, it was successful, people loved it, the gameplay was great. Like, if you like the Aliens universe, you kind of have to play it, because it's just so good. Like, Logan, did you play Fireteam Elite?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I plowed through it and all the expansions. I love it. It's Left for Dead Alien,
Yeah.
but a little different, and you can play it with friends or by yourself. The AI is relatively smart for a squad, and that's among the improvements that they're adding in the quality of life patch is even more boosts for alpha and beta, your synth companions that if you're playing solo.
Yeah, like the AI is actually good in that game for your, like, you know, your allies and the aliens. But yeah, it really looks like they're going to be doing a Fireteam Elite 2, which I can't wait. I can't wait to what they do with that, because my only issue with Aliens Fireteam Elite is I think it needs a story mode, like a proper one. But outside of that, like the gameplay is good, the AI is good, the amount of different aliens in the game I thought was really good. The fact that you go up against like submarines in the game, not submarines. I can't speak because I'm more nasally at the minute, but marines in the game. But yeah, it was just good to see from a developer because I think this year alone, I've probably seen about 50 of those posts. We delaying a game, the studio's going belly up, or something like that. They lost the game. One of the developers stepped on a piece of Lego. Now the game's cancelled. Like, the list goes on. But yeah, it was good to see because I think in gaming, a lot of like negativity always fills the news space, and the positive stuff just kind of gets moved to the wayside. Because as I was saying in the past few days, there's been a lot of layoffs in the industry. So when I saw that, I was thinking, okay, here we go. Because the first games to go are the licensed ones, right? Which is why whenever I see a licensed game on Xbox, I try to buy it digitally and physically, right? So I own Terminator Resistance digitally and physically because one day that license is going to get pulled, but hey, I'll own it. Same with Aliens games, but yeah, good to see, and I highly recommend people play it. Again, I think it might still be in Game Pass, but it's always on sale if it isn't, and I highly recommend people play that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's completely worth it even if it's not. And the same with Dark Descent. It's been a great time for Alien games.
And speaking of Aliens games, even though this isn't on Xbox, I think this should be. So there's Alien Isolation was great. I think it's a horror game everyone has to play. Again, this wasn't going to be a topic, but I want to rant a little bit. Games get pulled from services all the time, and so Alien Isolation got a sequel, but most people haven't played it, and it's called Alien Blackout.
It's on your phone.
Yeah, it's called Alien Blackout, and it's on iOS, right? And when that game was announced, a lot of people were hyped, like, we're finally getting that Alien Isolation sequel. And no, it's an iOS-only game. And big shame. And it got announced, I think, a few weeks ago. And I think it's going to be leaving iOS and Android forever from, I think, next week, which is a bit of a shame. Again, all these games always get pulled. I've ranted on here before where, like, Mass Effect Infiltrator, the spin-off to Mass Effect 3, you can't play anymore. It got pulled from iOS. Same with, like, look, remember the Dead Space game on iOS?
Yeah, briefly. It's been a hot minute, but I think I remember that being the thing.
Yeah, like, it was a full original Dead Space game. It was the thing is, it was only called just Dead Space, so a lot of people thought it was a dumbed down version of the console game, but no, it was an original story with a new character in a new area. I think it took place on a space station, and yeah, just like all these games get pulled and we just can't play them anymore. There was a really good game on iOS called Infinity Blade. That
one's so good.
Yeah, that was arguably the best iOS game. Because you could just play it with one hand, swipe left, swipe right to use the sword. I'm sure people in chat have played Infinity Blade at some point. Fun fact, I told Logan this a while ago. Infinity Blade, the arguably the best iOS game ever made, was originally going to come to Xbox One 9 years ago. And it got cancelled. It was going to be a Kinect game. But when, Epic start moving everything into Fortnite because they were in alpha then, and they stopped making games. So there's a full version of Infinity Blade for Xbox One floating around somewhere on a server, which is a bit of a shame. I would have loved to have played that on an Xbox with a controller because, again, it was just so good. Anyway, we'll move on. Enough of me ranting about stuff. So a new Star Wars remaster got announced about a month and a half ago, and we got some new details today. Star Wars Dark Forces Remastered is coming to Xbox Series XS and Xbox One consoles in February. And this was basically from an era where if you had a licensed game and you happen to have a gun in that game, guess what? You're getting a good Doom clone, right? That was an era where any Star Trek game that wasn't an RTS was a Doom clone. If you're a Star Wars game from that era, heavily influenced by Doom. Well, anyway, it's coming to Xbox. It's going to have 4K 60 and 120 frames modes, which is really cool. Uh, Also, the article made it look like the Xbox Series S is also going to get the 4K version. But considering how old that game is, wouldn't surprise me. And plus, like, the remaster they've done with it, they've completely gone over all the art. You have 3D characters instead of 2D sprites in the game, and it looks genuinely good. It was before my time. I never played it on PC. But yeah, it's finally coming to consoles. Logan, I know you hyped for this.
Oh yeah, it's a day one appointment for me. It's one I missed out on, and it's one I've always wanted to play. So the fact that it's coming to console and it's by Night Dive is, chef's kiss. They're the best at what they do. For them to get their hands on it and to make it possible, can't wait.
Yeah, it looks good. Like, if anyone's a Star Wars fan and they weren't around then or just never had a PC to play those games, like, I think like the 90s and early 2000s were just such a treasure trove for Star Wars games. Like, we were getting multiple Star Wars games a year, good Star Wars games, and they were just coming out all the time. And now I think we've had, what, 3 Star Wars games this generation? Or 2? Yeah, Star Wars Squadrons and Star Wars The Jedi Survivor. And I hope we get to that point again, because again, all these developers should be making really cool Star Wars games. But hey, it's coming out in February, which isn't really that far away if you think about it. So anyway, I'm looking forward to it. I think if people like old style Doom, they're really gonna like this. And yeah. Anyway, let's talk about Alan Wake 2, because Alan Wake 2 has always been kind of connected to Xbox. Like, Alan Wake 2, I should say Alan Wake back in the day, was originally announced as like this like multi-platform horror game, and then it was exclusive to Xbox 360. And I remember watching the E3 showcase, and I think it was 2006, long time ago. And Alan Wake was originally going to be this open world horror game. And as you may know, Alan Wake didn't come out in 2006, came out in 2010. So it was in development for a very long time. Well, anyway, about 6 months into development or something like that, they had to spend months re-engineering the game, because they figured out that an open-world horror game for Alan Wake just didn't work. People would just go off the beaten path and not actually do what they were meant to do. So they spent months re-engineering the game and making it a linear experience. In my opinion, they made the right choice. So anyway, they had all these years of hype. They had some really cool trailers. They changed Alan Wake's court, which was a good move, because the original court looked crap, let's be honest. Trying not to swear today, by the way. Well, anyway, the game came out. A lot of people liked it. It was a bit controversial at the time, because honestly, I think at the time reviewers just didn't like horror. It was a weird time for horror. Resident Evil made horror games basically these action games. So, like, Alan Wake come out, and it's this like psychological thing, and it took people back a bit. But the bad thing is that it launched the same day as Red Dead Redemption. Now, as you may tell, that was a bad move. Like, you launched the same day as a new Rockstar open world game. Like, that is the worst move. Like, Logan, you have to admit, like, even at the time in 2010, when like people were beginning to use social media more, like, launching Alan Wake, a horror game, especially during the 7th generation, the same day as a new open world Rockstar game, had to be possibly the worst decision in gaming.
Yeah, it's up there with an RPG maker trying to release a kind of smaller title during a Skyrim launch window, or somebody releases a new shooter during Call of Duty month. It's like one of those like brain cluck moments where you're like, what are you doing? That you're setting up your game to die, basically.
Yeah, and like, I got both, but like a lot of people, like nobody bought Alan Wake because of like Red Dead. Well, anyway, for years people have been asking for a sequel. When Quantum Break was teased, people thought it was Alan Wake 2. And then there was an actual controversy. Most people won't be able to remember this, but Sam Lake actually had to put out a YouTube video saying, "Hey, this is Quantum Break. It's its own thing. We may revisit Alan Wake at some point." And this was 2013. So people were like livid online because I was like, "Where's my Alan Wake 2?" So anyway, you fast forward to Quantum Break coming out, and there's like some references to like Night Springs, Bright Falls, and all that stuff. Things connected to Alan Wake. But anyway, Control eventually comes out. We get the Alan Wake DLC. The remaster comes out, and we get the sequel confirmed for 2023. And Alan Wake 2 launches in, what, 3 days? Man, what a long time coming. Like, I've been wanting a sequel since I finished that game. And then we got the 2 little expansions for it. I think it was called The Signal and The Writer. And it's almost here. And from what I've seen, like, people have been asking for these graphically intensive games. Like, these games that you look at and think, wow, this is the new generation. You know, that, like, back what we had in 2006 with Gears of War back in the day. Like, people played Gears of War and thought, wow, like, this is, like, incredible. And I think for this generation, we've had some amazing looking games, but I don't think we've had that big wow moment. And I look at Alan Wake 2, and my eyeballs are melting. Like, that game looks good. Like, really good. Like, granted, half of the 82 gigabyte of storage that game takes, it's probably textures. But, yeah, the game's almost here. It looks incredible. I have seen some complaints that you only get to play as Alan for 50% of the game. But the way I see it is that that's 100% more Alan Wake than we've had for 12 years. Or 13 years. So, to me, I don't really care. But, hey, it's almost here. Like, Logan, I know you're looking forward to it too. And, man, like, how do you feel about all this? Because, again, 3 days away, it's a big game.
Yeah, I've been waiting on this game for 13 years. I cannot wait. Alan Wake was one of my favorite stories ever, and even the remaster, it's not a looker in the graphics department, that's for sure. Still great game, but the visual leap that they're taking for the second one is just crazy. And the idea of it being more open world and having, two protagonists and you're in the dark place and then also in normal reality and then, dabbling in all this different kinds of combat and exploration and, storytelling elements. It's, Twin Peaks with True Detective, Stephen King, like everything mixed together. And I just cannot wait. I am so hyped for that game.
We have the first super chat of the day. Thank you very much, Nick W, for the $10. He says, agreed, Alan Wake. Not every game needs to be open world. I bought Alan Wake instead of Red Dead Redemption. Nice. When Alan Wake came out, can't wait for the sequel. Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is about Red Dead Redemption and Alan Wake coming out the same day is that I was in a game store and they had this like massive shelf filled with Red Dead Redemption. Like, it was just this sea of red. And they had this, like, kind of one locked off part to FIFA and Alan Wake. So, like, you could tell, like, Alan Wake had no chance. And it was such a shame. And the first game I played when I got both of those home was Alan Wake. Because, like, these Rockstar games, they're going to be on the shelf forever. Everyone's going to play them. But, like, Alan Wake, that was in an era where if you were a horror game, you were an action game. Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 6, things like that. The Alone in the Dark game, which came out around then. Like, they were action games. And Alan Wake was a horror game. Psychological horror, I think it says on the cover. And I even got the collector's edition, which comes in, like, a cardboard book, which I think's pretty cool. One of the main reasons I wanted a physical edition of the new Alan Wake is just to get a bloody statue of Alan Wake. Although now he just looks like John Wick. So you just have to buy a John Wick statue and put a torch in his hand.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, and, just put a little flashlight in his hand and you're set. But yeah, anyway, thank you very much, Nick W, for the $10. And you're right, like not every game has to be open world. It really isn't. Like, granted, the gameplay I've had on it a minute ago was just me jumping around on a moon in Starfield, but, like, and he's me ranting again, right? Every game now is open world, right? Horror games, I think, work perfectly good as linear games, right? I can't think of any instance of a good open world horror game, like at all. You just keep it away. Um, and I think Alan Wake 2, it's going to be linear. Again, 50% of the game takes place in Bright Falls. The other 50% takes place in like a nightmare version of New York, which I can't wait. Again, the game looks phenomenal, and I think everyone always talks about how Hideo Kojima is like this like crazy like intellectual mind of like craziness when it comes to game design and plot, which he is. He obviously I'm obsessed with Metal Gear, but like personally, I think Sam Lake's storytelling is far more interesting. Like one, it's actually cohesive and makes sense. Like as a Metal Gear fan, I can tell you it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. You need an entire encyclopedia in trying to understand Metal Gear Solid 4. Although I do talk about Metal Gear Solid 4 a lot, but Sam Lake and like Remedy's games, like they get a lot of hate, but they're really good. I think Remedy's this weird developer where they make these excellent games and they just don't sell. Quantum Break was killed because of its resolution, and that game was a looker. We don't get time travel based games, not really, in the AAA space. Control came out, and you can bloody fly around throwing objects at people. And I don't think, like outside of the first two Max Payne games, Remedy haven't had a colossal hit. And I'm hoping this is going to be their big game because again, there's a lot of hype behind it. A lot of people have told me they're not buying it because there's no physical edition. Like, it's a shame, but I wouldn't let that stop me from playing a good game. And it's also exclusive to the Epic Games launcher. But I mean, if you can play it on PC, why not? I don't know. I don't get the whole people being angry at Epic Games thing. But anyway, it comes out in 3 days. It looks really good. I can't wait for it. And if people don't like horror, apparently it's going to have a bunch of different like accessibility and difficulty options. So hey, why not? And if people want to play through the first game, I think it might be on sale. And it's a kind of, I wouldn't say it's a short game, but I think people could get through it by the time 2 comes out. Anyway, we'll move on. You know what? Let's get all the Sony stuff out of the way because this is going to affect the rest of the industry really. Industry wise, there's been a bunch of layoffs, like everywhere, and it's unfortunate. It's happening all over the place. A lot of companies like Quarters are coming up and all that stuff, and like Microsoft laid off some people, although they had obviously the massive merger, so that kind of makes sense. Sony's let a bunch of people go. Apparently there's some like higher ups, people that control like Sony's like creative team or something like that. Basically, the people that's responsible for all of Sony's hits, apparently gone, and it's crazy. People are leaving the game industry left and right. Pete Hines, he's leaving. Logan, I know you want to talk about this, but like it's crazy the amount of people that's been laid off the game industry the past few weeks.
Yeah, the whole industry is really just tightening its belt and just constricting, and everybody talks about consolidation. Well, like this isn't just consolidation. This is just like, constricting because it's so difficult to make it right now in this industry because all the game costs and everything are so expensive, and then recession, all this other stuff, and then when you have leadership leave like Jim Ryan and heads of departments leave, it creates some uncertainty. So the fact that Media Molecule and other places are getting hit with layoffs, it's really unfortunate. Wish them the best. Hope they land on their feet. It's just a reality of the current climate right now, and it's weird when it gets weaponized and people spin it to try to push one platform over the other. People taking someone's job status and if they get let go or not for as some kind of victory lap is kind of gross feeling. But hey, you do you. But I don't know. I feel it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, like, look at Epic. Epic laid off I think they laid off like 20% or something of all of Epic. And it turns out, and I'm sure people listening to this have played this game, Fall Guys. Apparently, the entire team got laid off. A massively successful multiplayer game. Like, nobody, all the players are asking in the comments on those tweets, like, what's happening with the game? Like, are we going to get more levels? Like, is the game going to get support? Like, I play Fall Guys every week with two of my friends, and, like, we don't know what's happening. Like, can we play this a month from now, a year from now? Like, nobody knows. And, like, it's been happening all over the place. And people have been weaponizing it. And, look, it's one thing to say, hey, Jim Ryan's leaving because the Activision deal went through, right? Excuse me. And it's a different thing of people just making fun of all the high, like, firings and stuff. It's like, these are people's jobs at the end of the day, and I think people can go a bit too far. You know, I will say this though: when the merger happened between Xbox and Activision and stuff, and there were some people laid off, there were people saying, "Hey, this is all Phil's fault." And when Sony started laying people off, it was just ignored. And
Yeah, that is true.
it happens all the time, and it's happening everywhere, right? Everywhere. Like Ubisoft's laid off a bunch of people, EA, and all that stuff. Like it's industry wide. It's crazy that's going on at the minute. I've had this prediction for a while that there's going to be some like massive shakeup, not like acquisition wise, but like I think the game industry is making all this money, but if you look at the store on all consoles and PC, like there's so many games coming out. I honestly don't understand how the game industry is sustainable. I really don't. The amount of people that tell me they don't want to pay $70 for games because, again, I personally think $70 for a video game is too much. It's not the 90s. You're not printing cartridges with these massive chips inside. Like, I think there might be I don't want to call it a game industry crash, but I wouldn't be shocked if something happens. Like, games cost way too much to make. We're expecting these super photorealistic games with these, 4K textures, HDA, Dolby Atmos out the anus, and these games just don't make the money they need. Like, granted, this is one of the things where I think Game Pass has been a saving grace for like Microsoft and like their teams and stuff, but like industry wise, like there's something going on. Like something's got to give at some point, and I don't know, Logan. Do you think as gamers, like if you look at like how long it takes for games to get made now, right? During the 7th generation, we got 3 Arkham games. 3. We got 3 BioShock games. We got 3 Mass Effect games. And if you look at development time now, development time's taken way too long for these games. It used to be 2 to 3 years for games to get made, and now it's more like 4 to 6. Like, do you think that's sustainable? Do you think we expect too much of these games?
I think in some areas, yes, and in some we don't expect enough. Like, for example, like people becoming fine with, weekly apology letters from companies because they released a game that's in, horrid state and is literally a broken piece of trash. Or, just releasing things with missing features that were initially promised but withheld, or cutting content and putting it out later as DLC and practices like that. Like, no, we should expect absolutely more than that. But then I think, on the other hand, I think honestly, it's a childish expression, but it feels like sometimes these game studios get a little too big for their britches a little bit with some of the stuff. And like they come up with these too grandiose, giant ideas and they try to put them out there and then they realize, oh, we don't have the facilities for this. We can't actually make this. And then they try to scale it down too late. Like, back in the 360 and even original Xbox era, we would have some major games come out and then like a sequel within a year or two. Like I remember Knights of the Old Republic came out in '03, and then Sith Lords came out like a year or two later. And like other stuff like that, like it was way more sustainable. And the games would come out, they would work at launch. Imagine that. No
Yeah.
major patches. And, there may be an expansion down the road, but it would be worth it and it would be meaty content. And now I think maybe there's got to be some give and take, or they've got to, life is about compromise. You it's almost impossible to please everyone in most things. But if you can find some common ground or some happy medium to where, okay, you really, really want to push fidelity and visuals, and like, oh my word, this literally looks like I'm looking in a mirror how realistic and lifelike this is. Maybe you need to tone down on how big the environments are, or how large an experience, or how, linear or open world or type of game you're making. Or if you want to go more open world and accessibility and like all kinds of crazy destruction and stuff, maybe try a more stylized art approach. And just there has to be a balance, because I think there are too many studios trying to do literally everything at once and trying to cram it into a shoebox and ship it, and it's just not working. Or if it does work, it takes an unholy amount of money and an unholy amount of time to get it out the door, to where then they're upping the price to $70, maybe even 80 at some point, to try to get cost back, because they spent a near decade making a game that was way too ambitious for what they could actually do.
Yeah, preach, man, because like it's like I mentioned a few minutes ago, like we used to get multiple sequels each generation. Actually, we just realized we're 40 minutes in. If you're enjoying the show, again, YouTube is crap at sharing these things sometimes. Please share, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Super chats are live if you want anything read out and you want to support the show and all that stuff. Anyway, the game industry. We used to get multiple games a generation, multiple sequels, and if you look back at the 7th generation, I'm sure everyone in chat right now played games during the 7th generation. Developers weren't aiming to make photorealistic games. They took the hardware they had at the time and made interesting art styles, even with lots of details. So if you look at Arkham Asylum when that came out, Arkham Asylum was a technical masterpiece when that came out. Is it realistic looking? No. Did it look realistic at the time? No. It's because it used a particular art style. But I think the second we shifted to the 8th gen, people were expecting these photorealistic characters in games, in all games. And developers stopped using interesting art styles. So now we are wanting photorealistic characters with Unreal Engine 5. We want Lumen. We want, realistic skin and all this stuff. And we're going to be waiting like half a decade between sequels. Like, again, it's 2023. I'm still waiting for my Mass Effect 4. Where's my bloody Arkham sequels? And look, where's Bioshock? Bioshock is apparently like 2 years away. Like, that's crazy, Ken Levine's new game, Judas, which was announced a year ago, that game looks nuts. Apparently, that game is also 2 years away. So, like, development is taking way too long. And, while you're talking, Logan, I checked Mass Effect 2. By the way, I will somehow make any topic about Mass Effect. So, Mass Effect 2, arguably one of the best games ever made, launched in the 26th of January 2010. Now, keep that date in mind, right? So, the sequel, the third game, shall I say, Mass Effect 3 got its first trailer in December 2010. The same year as we got Mass Effect 2 and all of the expansions. Like, isn't that crazy? So, we got that, right? The game launches in January. We get like 4 expansions, some of them pretty big. The game's reviewed well, people love it and all this stuff. It's a single player masterpiece. And the third game, the follow up, gets announced in December, where we get a trailer, like a full gameplay trailer, 5 months later. Like, Logan, isn't that crazy to think about? We got the game announced and released. Sorry, we got the game released in January, and then the third game was announced in December.
Yeah, like people were way more efficient with their resources and time back then. Like, I, I know this sounds like big boomer energy or back in my day kind of, but I think people were frankly a little bit more responsible with what they had and just were a little more used to having to work on a shoestring budget or get creative and find workarounds or, focus on passion instead of, bottom line numbers and, what a vocal group is chirping about certain features and aspects, and they just went out there and did it. Like, some of my favorite games of all time are linear, and there's something to be said. Like, I love open world games too. Some of my favorite games are open world as well, but there is trade-offs between them, and the idea that you could somehow get everything from one and marry it to everything from the other and get the quote unquote perfect game. Those are blue moon once in a generation aberrations that could theoretically happen if all the elements and stars align. Like, they can happen, but it's if everybody's shooting for that, that's going to be a whole lot of misfires and just a whole bunch of blanks. I think people are just, they should go back to the basics and start back there and work themselves up again instead of, shooting for unattainable things that they're frankly just, they're out of their depth.
Yeah, I mean, I put it like this. In June, I had this kind of epiphany when I was finishing my, second playthrough of Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Again, we're back at Mass Effect. And I was playing Mass Effect 3, and it occurred to me, like, would I actually be bothered much if Mass Effect 4 came out, right? And it's the game people wish, right? It's everything I want it to be. But it's no better looking than Mass Effect 3. Would it bother me? And it wouldn't, right? It would not bother me in the slightest. One, Mass Effect 3 still looks good. And I think, like, some people aren't going to like what I'm about to say. I think developers may need to take a step back with the realistic graphics constantly. Like, if you, like, let's say Battlefield 2050, I'll just make something up. Obviously, something like that, where they're pushing for insane graphics. Like, Battlefield 3 back in the day looked realistic. Like, obviously, a Battlefield game is going to look like that. But do I need a photorealistic Mass Effect 4? No. Like, when I saw developers talking about the AI metahuman stuff for Unreal Engine, like, I'm going to be honest, I don't want that in Mass Effect. I want my Unreal Engine 3 looking game, right, with my Unreal Engine 3 characters. And I don't know, it's just like, I think I like I always talk about 360 games, by the way, and the video I put out yesterday was a 360 game video. And, like, there's this weird charm with 7th generation games, where to me, like, they haven't aged, because nobody was trying to make these photorealistic games. Gears of War, great looking game. Were they trying to make it look photorealistic? No, because the dudes in that game are literally these walking cubes of meat, right? Like, they're these, like...
It's the Dude Bro game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Dude Bro game, where they just these like cube muscle men, and it's like, that's what that game is. Like, again, the Arkham games, Bioshock is beautiful, but it's not photorealistic. And I just think, like, maybe having everything photorealistic, where you have to, like, make the pause on people's faces, where, like, people want CGI photorealistic games for everything. And I'm not talking about, like, a one-off game, like, your HellBlade 2 and all that stuff, like, which is obviously going to be, photorealistic, but do we need every single game to be photorealistic? And I think that's I think that's really going to hurt the industry. It really is. Like, it is cool to have a nice, a nice shiny graphical intensive game with your new console, but do we need it for everything? I don't think we do. Dead Space Remake, which again comes to Game Pass this Thursday, I think that is a beautiful game, but I don't think it's photorealistic. I think they took advantage of the art style and went crazy with environmental detail. And the lighting in that game is possibly the best lighting I've ever seen in a game. Look at Hogwarts Legacy. Hogwarts Legacy is probably the best example of this, where it is not photorealistic in any way, but you can tell they went crazy with just the detail of the Hogwarts castle. The fact that the grass on the ground is actually grass and it's not just a green texture. And it just has this massive personality to it. And granted, it does have that, we are an Unreal Engine game, but it's a beautiful game and it's not photorealistic. And I don't know, I just think if we didn't get these photorealistic games, we would be on like multiple sequels of other games. Like Hi-Fi Rush is a good example. Beautiful game. It's not photorealistic and it's not meant to be. It's an art style. And I'd rather have multiple games switch up art styles rather than all look the same. Because if you take God of War and that game that comes out in January, I think it's called Banisher's Ghost of New Eden, right? You could put them side by side and think it's the same game because it's basically the same art style. Quote unquote photorealistic. And I don't think everything needs to be that. Which is why I've been rambling for 10 minutes about what I think might be a game crash, but like everyone's getting fired left and right. There's layoffs constantly. Studios are getting smaller, or they have to get bigger to support the bigger games. Like, I don't know. I think it's just a weird situation the industry's in. Anyway, we have another super chat by Nick W for $5. Thank you very much. He says, I prefer games to be sterilized. I prefer games to be stylized.
It's like, whoa now.
Yeah, I think my ability to read has just like gone out the window at this point. I prefer games to be stylized and not photorealistic. The Bioshock is gorgeous, and it was made in Unreal 2.5. Wow, really? 2.5. Do you know another game that's good looking? I think it was Unreal Engine 2.5. Splinter Cell Blacklist. Like, the water in that game still looks photorealistic. Even though the game has a bit jank to it, the shadows are like 280p. But it's a good looking game. But yeah, anyway, thank you very much, Dick W. And he's right, like, Bioshock back on 360. I think Bioshock was 2007. Like, that game is still bloody gorgeous. And it released on a 360 in 2007. Like, crazy. And like, look at, like, Bioshock Infinite, right? Bioshock Infinite, not photorealistic, bloody gorgeous, though. Insanely good-looking game. And, I don't know, like, maybe it's because I have this, like, nostalgia thing for the 360 generation, like, the 7th gen. But, like, games just had this weird personality for them. Every game you'd play would have this visual style that was different, and once in a while you'd get this photorealistic game. You'd play a Crysis, right? A Crysis 2, where you'd be like walking around Times Square at night and thinking, wow, this is incredible, right? And then you'd be playing something visually stylized, like, Rayman Origins, or something like that. And it just felt like we were getting so much variety, and we were getting sequels, like, every 2 years. Again, I had 3 Arkham games that generation. Where's my 3 Arkham games this generation? Last time I checked, I don't have any, right? Do you know how angry that makes me? That makes me so annoyed, right? I am getting that Suicide Squad game whenever it comes out, but, man, I do miss the days of getting multiple sequels a generation. Because, look, I think we can all admit that the next Red Dead Redemption, that's probably going to come out in, the 2035? Like, the future, basically. And that's Blade Runner year type thing. And, man, I just miss those days, Anyway, that's been me ranting about nostalgia in the game industry, but I just think the industry's something weird's going to happen, or something needs to change, because these games cannot be sustainable. It really can't, especially when you have Square Enix coming out saying, "Hey, this game needs to sell like 7.5 million or something." They did that with Tomb Raider back in the day, which is stupid. Then again, that is Square Enix that spent $110 million on marketing. Anyway, I'm just ranting a bit. Anyway, we'll change topic. You know what, Logan? You briefly mentioned this when I said, "Do we expect too much?" And you mentioned how games get patches late, incomplete features. Well, there's a game that came out recently, and it just hit 1 million in sales called Lords of the Fallen, and the Xbox patch was put out late. I think I'll be wondering, anyone chat, did Lords of the Fallen get its Xbox patch? The one that corrected the graphical errors, because that game had some Nintendo 64 style textures when it launched on Xbox. But apparently there's a new patch. I'm not sure if that's it. Anyway, it sold 1 million copies, and I just feel like you're right. Like, there's games do feel like they're not feature complete at launch now. At least not all of them, and it's a shame. We see this all the time. Again, I went back to the last topic. Anyway, we'll move on. You know what? Let's talk about Metal Gear Solid. Some juicy stuff. So the new Metal Gear Solid collection came out today, and apparently, again, it has bugs, but they've addressed it. They're going to put out a patch soon, which is very good to hear. You know what? We have a $5 super chat by Hacky Sack. Thank you very much. He says, the gaming industry needs some kind of reset on game design approach. That's why I supported AC Mirage. Well, again, thank you very much for the $5. And, that's absolutely right. Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Logan, did you play that? Assassin's Creed Valhalla?
I actually have not. I kind of got burnt out on the big, massive, open world Assassin's Creed formula for a bit, so I have not played through Valhalla yet.
So in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you basically have 90,000 miles of open world, where like it's a gorgeous game. Don't get me wrong, and I think the combat in that game is super fun, right? But it's a massive game, colossally massive game, and there's multiple regions, right? There's England, there's I think Norway, there's Asgard. Bloody Asgard, and it's a huge game, right? But you have AC Mirage, right? They say back to roots, right? And the cool thing about Mirage is that the game is basically a city with some outskirts, right? The game's map is nowhere near as big as Valhalla. You could probably fit Mirage probably about 40 times into Valhalla, but the city has so much personality. They've concentrated on making the city itself a character, which you take part in. And it's just a fun game. And it feels like a 360 game. And I don't mean that in a mean way. Like, it feels purposeful. Because you didn't have miles of wasted space in 360 games. Not really. And, look at Assassin's Creed 2. You had, 4 cities to go through. And it all felt purposeful. You had to go through all of each city to do each quest. But in Valhalla, it's basically, hey, go to point B, which is 55,000 miles away. You have to go over 10 hills. There's miles of nothing in that game. Why? Do we need miles of nothing in that game? Like Red Dead Redemption 2, it makes sense. It's to give some sort of, ambience and atmosphere. When you're walking around the Wild West, it feels like you're walking around as a cowboy in the Wild West. In Valhalla, the world feels dead because there's nothing alive. It feels bland. But with Mirage, it just Hacky Sack's right. It feels like I don't want to say a step back because that's an insult, but it feels like a step in the right direction for Ubisoft because, again, the whole map is purposeful. It's fun. The gameplay in that game is great, by the way. And I think more people need to play that because everything's the same now. Everything. And I kind of don't like that, Maybe that's just me wanting to get more people to buy, Mirage. Anyway, where was I going with this? Yeah, Metal Gear Solid. The collection launched. Buggy, it's getting a patch, all that stuff. And thankfully, you can buy them individually. So if you have the HD collection like me back in the day, you can buy Metal Gear Solid 1 standalone. It's £15, I think 90 in the UK, which, should I buy a PlayStation 1 game for basically £16. I know I am because I loved that game back in the day. Anyway, where am I going with this? So a bunch of people, I assume on PC, went through the source code for the game, and you're never going to believe what they found. They found Metal Gear Solid 5 mentioned in the source code, also Peace Walker. But the thing that really stuck out was Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots, the PlayStation 3 game. Now, why would that be mentioned in the code? Because apparently these 3 games are going to be in Master Collection Volume 2. Now, I've port begged Metal Gear Solid 4 for about 5 years, right? That's a lot of port begging, right? I've port begged that game, that PlayStation 3 game, so many times, and I will later, because it's a good game. It's an excellent game. Yes, it may have 9 hours of cutscenes, but that's not the point. It's a damn good game. Logan, did you play Metal Gear 4 at all?
No, I watched my brother play it because he had a PS3 at launch, so he was all about the Metal Gear Solid collect series, so I saw him play it, but I never actually played it. It's one I've always wanted to though.
Yeah, like, don't get me wrong. There is a lot of cutscenes in that game, but it's trapped on ancient hardware. Unless you have a PC and do some like naughty things, you can play that. But if you're on console, it's stranded. Like, and the fact that we may be getting this like PlayStation 3 game, like on an Xbox in the next several months, like that's exciting. When that game does come out, it looks like it's definitely happening now. I noticed in the initial trailer the 4 looks highlighted. Maybe that's just me reading too much into it. But yeah, it looks like Metal Gear Solid 4 is coming to Xbox. And am I going to say it's because of my port begging? Well, we'll just have to wait and find out. But hey, I can't wait for it. Again, I love that PlayStation 3 game. It's the reason I have a PlayStation 3. And maybe because my PlayStation 3 was an affordable Blu-ray player in 2012. But yeah, looking forward to it. Logan, do you think you'll pick up the current collection or the new one?
Um, I will pick up part 2 with the 4th one, and I will pick up the first game when it's on sale individually. But I've already got the 360 versions, and they run great and they're enhanced. So I really don't see need to support a Konami cash grab right now.
Yeah, I think we're kind of on the same page because, like, I've been wanting to get this collection, and I'm going to admit it, right, for the achievements, right? I can double up on achievements, and I thought just to test my eyes, and I want people to try this. If you have the HD collection on 360 or sorry Xbox One or Xbox Series consoles, because it's backwards compatible, right? Play it for a little bit, and then watch a new version on YouTube, right? Because I was thinking, look, that was 720p, right? And no upscale and all that stuff, like no 4K enhancement by Microsoft. Like, it is a 720p game. And the new version's at 1080p. Can I tell the difference? I have 20/20 vision. I have perfect vision, right? Can I see a difference between my 360 version and the new one? And I looked at a bunch of gameplay online, and I found just the best videos I could find. And granted, YouTube does have some. It's not really a good bit rate when it comes to like video, but it's an old game. I can try kind of play along with it. Anyway, I'm putting this out there. I could not see any difference between my backwards compatible version and the new fancy one, air quotes. So maybe if you do own the HD collection, maybe just get the first one like me, because again, like £50 for a cash grab, like that's expensive. It really is. People shouldn't support this if they've already got it. Basically, I'm gonna buy the first game because I'm an idiot apparently, but I just like that. I like that nostalgia, you know. And by the way, Logan, have you seen the gameplay of the first one?
Um, I haven't seen the new gameplay. I remember playing it on the PS1, but no, I haven't seen the new gameplay. No.
Right, so it's quote unquote 1080p, 30 frames. Apparently, it's not 60 because the game breaks. The code's written, so it has to run at 30, which fair enough, whatever. It's an old game. But, like, when they said 1080p, am I looking at 1080p visuals? Like, and it looks like it's just stretched out to 1080p. Um, so basically, you have a game that, I'm not even kidding, looks no different than the PlayStation 1 version that you could have played on a CRT back in the day. Like, it looks no better at all. And £15, 15, £16 for a PlayStation 1 game without any upgrades at all. I mean, I want to love Konami, for their games, but they do not make it easy. Like, they have Netflix making Castlevania, great. But they're sitting on all these IPs and they're doing nothing. So, like, when I look forward to a possible Metal Gear Solid 4, I'm putting this out there. I expect that to be a bare bones port. It's going to be 720p, 2 frames per second. It's not going to have a full 1,000 achievements, probably. It's probably going to have 2. And I don't know, like, I want Konami to do better, because there's no way we should be playing Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3, at least, at 4K, right? We should be playing those games at 4K, 60. And the Switch, by the way, the Switch is far more powerful to play those games at a high resolution and frame rate. But no, they had to go bare bones with it. I think, if these games aren't backwards compatible for most people, they should put some effort in, actually try and sell it. Like, look at Rockstar. They did a bare bones job with the Red Dead Redemption port. Granted, it's 60 frames now, but it looks no different. And yeah, I just think I'm getting a bit sick of these developers putting out these bare bones ports. When you have, again, here we go, Metal Gear Solid Legendary Edition, where it has the best upgrades, right? Like, do that. Treat your games right. That's all we ask. And plus, wouldn't you think a copy of the game would sell more if they actually put, effort in rather than half-arsing it? I don't know. Maybe that's just me being crazy. Maybe it's just me demanding too much. I don't know. But I would just like some good ports. That's all I ask. If I'm paying £16 for a PlayStation 1 game on my Xbox Series X, can I at least have the game upscaled? That's all I bloody ask. Anyway, we'll move on. Logan, you mentioned this in the topics just before the show started. You want to talk about the industry's obsession with game bugs. Elaborate while I cough to death.
Okay, well, I hope you get better soon, man. But yeah, just the bugs in general, it's just been quite amusing the past few months with major exclusives coming out on either platform, and how it gets spun one way or another, and about bugs and what is buggy enough, or we're going to count bugs in this review, but we're not going to count bugs in that review, or, you know, do bugs, should they count as part of a score? Should they count as this or that? Should there be criteria for these things? And then, like, um, what is, just trying to bug farm and, like, trying to create problems in a game just for social media clout, and what is, legitimate game breaking problems that people should know about and post about and complain about. And it all started with the Starfield discourse, and I have never seen a game in my life go through the ringer that game went through over just the most absolute nonsensical, benign things. And it made a lot of people mad. And frankly, well deserved. It was ridiculous what it went through. And then you see other games come out from other companies, and it doesn't seem to be getting the same fine tooth comb approach to how it operates or runs or does things. And fair or not, it's just an observation, and I find it amusing, and it's really funny, some of the memes and bugs you see out there in some of these games. some are not safe for work. Like there was one the other day that was really really funny that circulated about Spider-Man.
I
But
saw it.
if you want to see it, it's out there. It's really funny though. Um, but in general, I think there is just not a standard on what is acceptable, what's not acceptable, and just warfaring random things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that people listening right now may have seen this post, but I can't remember if it was Digital Foundry or Eurogamer where they posted that like Spider-Man didn't have any bugs while they were reviewing it, but after they finished the review and posted the review, they start getting all these bugs. And the bugs are mentioned in Starfield's reviews, but I put it like this: like I've played all of Bethesda's RPGs, and they've all had bugs. Starfield, I experienced one audio bug. I basically came out of hyperspace, and then the audio was missing for maybe like 3 seconds, and it came back. Right, so like to me, that wasn't even worth even mentioning. So like, and I'm saying these glitches for Spider-Man, and like nobody's talking about it. And this just goes to show you're right. Like it's a bit one-sided because Starfield came out, people were making compilations, talking about the bugs all the time. And the other day, about 2 days ago, I posted saying like, isn't it strange how it's okay to talk about Starfield's bugs and dock points for that, but not other games by other publishers. And I got a bunch of replies saying, "Oh, stop being toxic and just play the game. It doesn't matter." And it's like we can all see the same thing that's going on, right? The gaming industry reviewers like it's not fair. It really isn't. I've seen more bugs for Spider-Man than I've seen in Starfield, and most of the content I see on Twitter is by Xbox fans, and they were all posting whenever they had bugs. So like, but nobody's talking about Spider-Man's. It didn't get docked points because of bugs. Maybe should bugs be mentioned in a review, right? Well, if that's the case, shouldn't they be mentioned in all reviews? Isn't it a bit weird how like these reviewers only start getting bugs after they finish the game for the review? Like it's weird how this just keeps happening. And then like I put it like this: like back in the day, again, Mass Effect 2007. If you play that game on higher difficulty levels, it affects the frame rate, right? Because rocket Geth troopers fire more frequently, meaning the frame rate tanks. So if you play on veteran or higher, you may be playing at like 15 frames per second, right? If you're lucky. And I don't remember any review mentioning performance. And now reviews will mention performance and mention bugs. And like I just look back to then, it's like I don't remember reviews mentioning this stuff. But now they do. But now they only do it for certain games by certain publishers. Like Cyberpunk came out, and that was a weird one because some people the reviews were basically done on PC almost across the board, and like a lot of the reviews didn't mention it, and if they did, they were like, "Oh, it was only a thing that I got once." But granted, Cyberpunk's in a great place now. But like, look at Redfall, right? That was reported to have some bugs, but Spider-Man has not had the same treatment as other games have. It's like, if you point any of this stuff out, you get called a fanboy. You get told you're toxic. You should concentrate on just playing games. But like, how can you just like let this stuff slide? Why is everything so one-sided? Like, I think all games that's ever been made has bugs, right? All of them. Just because something's your favorite, that doesn't mean it's the best. That doesn't mean there's nothing wrong with. Like, every game has bugs. Anyway, we have another super chat. Thank you very much, Nick W, for $2. He says bugs need to be mentioned in every game. Like, easy across the board, right? Like, I had a audio bug with Starfield. That's it. And there's been times when people have said they've had bugs in games, and I haven't had any, right? And there's been times when people have said they haven't had bugs in games, and I have, right? I'm looking at my shelf right now, right? Elden Ring, right? Elden Ring, for me, crashed a bunch of times. But to me, that game's still a 10 out of 10 because of my overall experience with the game. Persona 4 Golden, right? I went back to playing that. I became friends with a fox. Pretty cool thing. It gave me some healing leaves or something. The game crashed. But again, I don't think that didn't really ruin my experience. It just happened, and it's not something that's happened frequently. Lego Star Wars, that game crashed a bunch for me. It really did. What else have we got? You know what? The Quarry, that crashed as well. I think during my entire experience, the Quarry crashed 6 times. But again, it's a fantastic game. I think more people need to play. But, like, why are the bugs only mentioned for some games? And this isn't like Starfield versus Spider-Man thing. Like, no, this is an industry thing. Why is it only talked about for certain games? We only talk about performance for certain games. I've seen some people say, like, Spider-Man crashed their console, but they're not letting that interfere with the review. But they did let Starfield, like, audio bugs dock points, like, their review for it. I don't know. It's just weird how the game industry is so one-sided. If you mention it, you get called an expert or a fanboy. But it's like, why are people okay with this one-sidedness? Like, it's kind of scary if you think about it. And that goes beyond bugs. Like, remember, I think it was Eurogamer or the Metro that got the Starfield review out. Like, they docked points for Starfield because apparently Xbox had a dry year. Like, that's crazy. And it's gonna keep getting this. It's gonna get worse, in my opinion. Microsoft, they have a lot of big games coming out over the next year, and yeah, it's crazy. I don't want to say these reviewers get attacked online or anything like that, but if someone says, like, the stuff they've been saying, like, hey, I didn't get any bugs during my review, and then all of a sudden I got bugs, well, does that mean you put them in afterwards then? Like, do you, like, update your article saying that there were bugs? I'm guessing not from the stuff I've seen, but it's kind of scary how one-sided the entire game industry is. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Logan, have you got anything else to say on the topic before we move on?
No, it's not just a Starfield versus Spider-Man or a PlayStation versus an Xbox or Nintendo or whatever problem. It's just something I've noticed across the board. Like, even some multi-plat games I've noticed, like, some are riddled with bugs and you don't hear a cricket chirp about it. And nothing happens and nobody worries about it. It's not included. And then some games have a few minor hiccups and they get absolutely stoned to death over it. And dragged across the coals in the review process. It seems like there should just be kind of a standard. Like, do you talk about them? Do you not? Do you put them as part of your grade? Do you put them as maybe in commentary, like, hey, here are some things I encountered during my experience that wasn't related to, XYZ story, gameplay, whatever. And it feels like the whole standard for the whole industry is just broken and convoluted mess. And it doesn't seem fair, but, that's the way it goes, I guess.
And obviously, like, people's player experiences differ, right? Like, people were talking about how Jedi Survivor was plagued with bugs, but I didn't have any. Like, I experienced...
Yeah, me either, for the most part.
Yeah, like, I think, again, when it comes to bugs for games, mainly I get audio ones. Like, sound will cut out, but outside of that, like, Jedi Survivor for me was perfect, and I don't get it, But again, I just want the industry to be more, like, fair. Like, if we demand developers to be transparent, shouldn't we expect reviewers to be the same? Like, why are some games getting a pass when others aren't? Cyberpunk was absolutely dragged through the coals for its bugs, but other games aren't. Like, that should not be happening. And, like, look, if we can all agree that, in real life, like, actual news can be, it's influential, but it's also influenced by other factors. Like, and then we look at the gaming space and say that's not the same case. Like, come on, like it's blatantly obvious when,
There's slant.
yeah,
There are.
yeah, like it's obvious that there's some like these outlets do side with certain publishers and platforms, and I don't know, like look at FromSoft, right? I love FromSoft games. I honestly think that FromSoft get a bit of a pass from some media outlets. I really do, and
They do.
and I love their games, by the way. I think Elden Ring is a masterpiece. But again, the bugs were never mentioned in that game. It was never docked points. I just want the industry to be better because we should all want that. We should. You know, and you look at Nintendo. Man, I've never seen any bugs for their games. By the way, you all see these compilations for Xbox and Sony games, but like Nintendo, apparently their games don't have bugs. At least I've never seen any. But anyway, journalists, just do better. That's all we ask. Anyway, so tomorrow Microsoft has the new Xbox developer partner preview. And this is a new format for them. Apparently, it's going to be no talking by developers. It's going to be game, trailer, trailer, and that's it. Right? It's going to be people have looked at the YouTube source code. It's going to be like 28 minutes, 50 seconds, and nothing but trailers. And I can't wait for this because the interesting thing is the little trailer they put out today features Ark Survival Ascended, which is the remaster of Ark Survival Evolved. It's going to feature Dungeons of Hinterberg. I think that's the new timed exclusive where the girl's in the mining cart. Yakuza Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, Alan Wake 2, and more. So it's 28 minutes and filled with trailers. So I think the and more part is going to be really interesting because I'm putting my cards on the table when I say this. I 100% believe Baldur's Gate 3 is going to be announced for Xbox, or at least its release date during the show. Like, am I crazy, Logan? Like, what do you think? What do you think is going to happen during the show? What are you looking forward to? Because it's a new format for Microsoft, and they're clearly moving away from the whole, hey, let's wait till E3. They dropped news at the Developer Direct in January. Then they were at the Summer Showcase in June. Then they were at Gamescom in August, TGS in September, and now this game developer preview thing.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited for this new format to see how it goes. It's something different for them, and they've learned and taken feedback from fans, consumers, the media, the industry, their colleagues, and they've observed what some other companies have done. And it's always important to, there is such thing as bad news, so you don't want to make news just to have news, but you don't want to ever go through long periods of time where you don't have at least some presence. You can't have a 2022 again or a early pandemic again where you go months upon months and there is jack out there. And then finally they, give you a drip feed for a little bit of stuff. Like this keeps a steady flow of content going, keeps people happy, keeps the fan base placated. The idea of this being finally we don't have a bunch of media heads sitting on a couch and talking and making just comical attempts at small talk and casual conversation and trying to carry a show for 40 minutes or so. They cut that crap out, and it's just basically here's the games, here's some announcements, yada yada yada, here's the next one, boom, bang bang bang, we're done. I think it's a good idea, and I'm glad that they're throwing that out there as another new show format.
Do you think we'll see Baldur's Gate?
I don't know. Honestly, I feel like Larian's been a bit cagey lately, and It, I don't know. They've kind of come off a bit salty online lately as well. So I don't know if it'll be there or not, but still expect it before the end of the year. But they've had some kind of weird energy lately. So I'm not sure if I would expect it tomorrow.
Yeah, you mentioned that the whole saltiness thing. That is weird because like they've had a huge successful launch. Late August on PC, and then it launched on PlayStation, where it reached 20th in the sales. But that's a different topic for another day. Um, like they hit this like massively successful game. It was like one of the top played games on Twitch. It had like 800,000 concurrent players, like crazy for a CRPG. But like when Starfield came out and was number one, um, and then like a week later it went back to Baldur's Gate. Like I think it was like a few of the developers tweeted out saying, "Ah, it's good to be back" and stuff like that. It's like normally when it comes to games, like the developers like will like celebrate each other's games, and I never really saw that with Starfield from Baldur's Gate devs. Maybe it just wasn't in my feed, but it was weird how like if Baldur's Gate moved out of the top spot and was something else like Starfield, it was a bad situation all of a sudden. You know, that was a weird one. But hey, I think a lot of people on Xbox are going to like that. Anyway, we're talking about the developers preview program thing. Preview, what's it called? Preview what? I've lost it.
Here, let me look it up. It's Xbox. See what it
Wait,
is.
partner preview. Sorry about that.
Partner preview.
Yeah, the thing is, Microsoft. I love their games, but their naming convention for their shows keeps confusing me. They have the Developer Direct, which is their own games. They have this partner preview, which is third-party games. Cool. But then I keep getting that mixed up with the partner program or preview program. Like, seriously, name these things better. But anyway, I'm looking forward to it. The shocking thing for me is Alan Wake 2 being there. Alan Wake 2 has been, like, people have theorized it's been, like, a marketing deal between Remedy and PlayStation. Turns out that's not the case because it's there. Maybe we'll see, like, the Xbox Series X and S versions. Apparently, they've put a lot of work into the console versions, so looking forward to that. I think it's good because, like, Nintendo's strong suit for their, game showings is that whenever they have a Nintendo Direct, that's all it is. It's game, 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 game. That's all it is, right? And people love that format. Like, I love developer talk. I love listening to the whole behind the scenes thing. But do we really need to see some dudes sitting on a couch talking about the game or like newly announced game? Like, we want to see this thing. The E3 format or Summer Games format, I think, was really cool because it was just games, trailer, 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 and then like the next day they did the extended preview thing where they talked to the developers. Like, I love the developers and what they make, but let's all be honest, we want to see the games, right? Same with the Game Awards. Do we really show up to see these developers get awards, or do we show up to see the trailers? Let's be honest. But anyway, that thing's tomorrow at 6 p.m. UK time. And like you were saying, Logan, they need to spread things out more. And they need to actually show things throughout the year. And that's third party as well. Sony didn't have a showcase for about, I think it was like 600 days. Like, that would drive me back. Imagine if Microsoft never had a showcase for 600 days. People would be livid. But again, this is a third-party showcase. And I've noticed whenever there's a third-party showcase by anyone, people kind of get really salty and angry about it. Like, you look at it, like, there's the console war going online, right? People arguing about exclusives. But the truth is, 99% of the year, we are all playing the same bloody games. Like, that's the truth of it, right? Multi-platform games is mainly what we all play. But yeah, anyway, that's tomorrow. Can't wait for that. I hope there's some really cool things there. Infinite Wealth being there, I think we're probably going to get the English trailer because the Yakuza and Sega, they've been really weird showing off the English version of trailers recently, I've noticed. But hey, again, we should know tomorrow. Anyway, you know what? Let's talk about People Can Fly. So the developers of Judgment, Gears of War Judgment, and Outriders. Um, Now, I had a bit of a rant about this the other day, but I think some people were angry about it. But anyway, they've been rumored to be making a new Xbox exclusive for the past 3 months. I believe Jez Corden broke the story, and you know I'm looking forward to it. Right? They make third-person shooters. That's their thing now, and apparently they came out and said, look, they are making a new AAA exclusive for Xbox, and we don't know exactly what it is. Again, people think it's a third-person shooter. And my only argument is, not really arguments that, Logan, I don't know if you remembered this or realized this, that if you look at People Can Fly's games, right, Gears Judgment and Outriders, their game design consists of walking into an open area, fight a bunch of enemies, go to the next area, fight more enemies, and then when you've beaten those enemies, you go into another area where you fight 3 waves followed by a boss. And then it's rinse and repeat. That's why I stopped playing Outriders. I was so hyped for Outriders. Like, the tweets are there. I made a video about it. I was so hyped for Outriders. And then after maybe like 12 hours of playing, or something like that, it was probably longer, it began to wear really thin on me. People Can Fly's game design is boring, right? It's the gameplay is good. Don't get me wrong. The characters they had, the world they had was really interesting. The backstory of how they got to that planet, but like it's the same gameplay. Like that's why Gears Judgment wasn't as popular as the trilogy, because in the Gears games, you do more than just walk to area and clear it out. There's set pieces. There's mission level. Vehicle levels. Can't speak today. And there's something different each level. And like even like in a lot of third-person shooters like Gears of War and Uncharted and stuff, part of the levels consist of you walking through an area to get to the next main thing, right? So in Gears 2, you're walking through the ruins, and then you get on the little raft, and then you have the boss fight with the big fish thing, right? Really cool thing, mixes up the gameplay a bit. But Gears Judgment was just walk into an area, find the power weapon, beat 3 waves while Jax, breaches the door, and then fight another 3 waves, and it just wore really thin. Now, I may have been ranting a bit there. I am looking forward to their new game. I just want them to mix up gameplay. Logan, what do you think of the whole People Can Fly making a new Xbox exclusive?
I'm excited. I'm all for more exclusives for the platform, and I might be in the minority, but I actually enjoyed Gears Judgment. But to me, I enjoyed it mainly because of the characters and the story, and that there were a few innovations they added to the game that weren't in some of the other ones, like some new weapons, or like the optional side quest like challenges that could make missions more difficult, and if you beat them you got extra rewards and stuff, like, oh, instead of the normal factory mission, they are lambent crawlers, or instead of this, wretches and stuff like that. But overall, like, I like their games. They've been fun, but they do kind of burn out fast. Like Bulletstorm, for example, was a lot of fun, but it was also like, okay, I am literally just unloading clip after clip after clip into these dudes, and that's all it is. Like, there's not much variety. But, I don't know what they're making. Like, what if they're doing another spin-off for Xbox? Like, everybody assumes it's a new game, but what if it's another spin-off like they did with Judgment?
I mean, I would like a spin-off for Gears, but like my only concern is that the game design thing. Like I can't. Maybe age is like getting to us something. Although I'm still young, but like maybe it's just like really getting to me. Like walking into an area and clearing out 3 waves is the most video gamey thing. I'm sick of, right? If you're playing
I'm
Horde,
tired of the rule of 3 in gaming in
yeah,
general, honestly. Always 3 waves, 3 clicks, three items to get. It's a joke at this point.
Yeah, like I think the whole like glowing glowing orbs on enemies, it's just as bad as that at this point. Like like, why is it three? Like, do something different. And I think people can fly. They are talented. They really talented. Outriders is a cool looking game, and the gameplay is bloody awesome. But I can't fight three waves again. Like, I just can't. I got sick of that really quick. Like, even Mass Effect again. I bring it up to Mass Effect. Like, Mass Effect 3 and Mass Effect 2 are really good examples of third person shooters, right? You walk through areas, there's set pieces, there's cutscenes in between, like segments of gameplay. And like Outriders, you go to the next area in your little like, bus thing, and then you can customize your bus. Why? It doesn't do anything. And they marketed that game to be like a Mass Effect style RPG, but people treated it like Destiny. So they were constantly being asked about like Destiny style questions, like what's the end game? And the developer actually said, no, when you finish the game, you play something else, right? And I don't know, like I'm sure they'll come up with something cool, but like 3 for 3, Bulletstorm, Judgment, I should say Gears Judgment, and Outriders, it's the same three-way format. Clear area, go to the next area. Again, it could be something really cool. Maybe they make it something in the Halo universe. Like, it could be really surprising. Maybe we'll see something like that, next year or something, because Outriders has been out for ages now, and Outriders doesn't get new content, so they've pretty much been making this game, like the whole team, basically, I'm guessing. Anyway, I'm looking forward to it. I don't need something to be, and this goes into reviews as well, I don't need a new game to be like this new innovative thing, right? I just need a new game to be good. So if it is a new third-person shooter and it maybe emulates Gears 2, that's awesome. I don't care. I don't need something brand new. I need something to be good. But I can't do that three-wave thing anymore, man. I just can't. Like, it's a die inside. Like, I just can't do it anymore. If I'm replaying an old game, I get it, but man, like, I've been wondering in chat, does the three-wave of enemies thing not get boring at this point? Like, I think I'm triggered, right? Like, I can't do that three-wave thing. But anyway, people can fly. New Xbox exclusive. I'm sure they'll come up with something interesting. Speaking of Outriders, I loved that game world, by the way. They came up with such a cool story for, like, why they went to that new planet and, like, why they were all separated into different towns and stuff. And, like, there was these cults that have formed, like, from these, like, little religions they made up from the artifacts they found. Really cool game. Like, if they kept to what they kind of marketed the game as a Mass Effect 2 style RPG, I would have gave that game, like, a 9 out of 10. They had so much potential there and just didn't do anything with it, really. Anyway, we'll move on. So the ABK deal is done, thankfully. No more ABK, CMA, all that crap in the news feed all the time. And that was wearing thin with me. 20 months of every single day, every news story would be like, is Call of Duty going to remain on PlayStation? Is it going to be on Switch? And every single topic was the CMA said this, the FTC did that, and for 20 months that took over all of game news, and finally it's done, and now we can get to the interesting stuff because Phil Spencer's mentioned he wants to bring back franchises. Guitar Hero has been mentioned multiple times now, which I'm 99% sure they will bring back Guitar Hero properly this time, and they have all these different intellectual properties they can revisit now. And earlier today, Phil Spencer and a bunch of Xbox executives were actually meeting up at Blizzard and Activision to talk about things. Logan, I know you want to talk about this. What's going on?
Yeah, this week they were at Blizzard, and today they were specifically in Irvine to visit the Blizzard HQ and campus, and they met with a bunch of devs and leadership and took photos and had a meet and greet and talked and Jez Corden at Windows Central had an article about the details about, kind of what the dialogue was like and the mood and just how everything was really positive and upbeat. People are really excited. There's a little, cautious anxiety because of where they're coming from, but that's to be expected. But for the most part, everybody's super excited, happy. Xbox and Phil were saying that basically we're in listening mode right now. We're gathering information, we're listening, we're talking to everybody, hearing their stances on things, what they need, what they want to do going forward. And then, basically do a circuit and kind of do that at all the new places they've acquired and then make decisions on things. Like, they're not in, okay, we show up and here's a royal decree, scroll drops to the floor, and these are the rules edicted by Phil, and they go into effect immediately. That's not what they're doing. They're not going on some conquering victory lap kind of thing. They're going around, meeting everybody, getting to know them, putting faces to the names and learning what they need to about these studios and the culture and what they want to do, which is awesome. And they did that with King last week in Stockholm and London. They're at Blizzard today. I think they were going to do Activision as well this week. And then from there, who knows? But the future is very bright. And if the online posts from people at Blizzard are any indication, it seems like people are pretty thrilled about this new regime change.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Bethesda, right? Bethesda, they were always fundamentally a single player developer, and then about 2 to 3 years before Microsoft purchased them, they were leaning into multiplayer and microtransactions. Fallout 76, that terrible Wolfenstein game, and some mobile games like there's a card game and Elder Scrolls Blades, like these microtransaction infused games. And they were always celebrated as a single player only developer. And now Microsoft picks them up and they clearly leaning back into single player. And I think there's excitement over at Blizzard and Activision because if you look at their recent games, even like the mobile ones, like Diablo Immortal and Overwatch and all this stuff, like these games that are heavily monetized with microtransactions. Let's face it, like everyone talks about like Blizzard games now in a pretty negative way due to the monetization factor, right? Diablo, be it 4 and Immortal, like people hate the microtransactions. Overwatch, like the same thing. And I think the excitement is because I think people talk about Microsoft as this money hungry game publisher, filled with microtransactions and stuff. But if you look at their games, there aren't microtransactions at all. People were celebrating Baldur's Gate 3 for being this single player RPG that have no microtransactions. Do you know what else does that? Starfield. There's no microtransactions and it's purely single player. And I think that's where some of the excitement's coming from. I think we're going to see a lot less, I should say, external monetization practices in games. So you'll purchase your game, maybe there'll be some packs you can get, but like I think a lot of Activision games are going to be a lot better for players because you're not going to be driven to a store page every time you open a game. Diablo 4 apparently has like, I haven't played it in a while, but you start the game and you can buy the battle pass straight away. And by the way, not every game needs a bloody battle pass. Let's be honest. I think that's some of the excitement. Like when Microsoft announced that they were going to purchase Activision Blizzard, the World of Warcraft community online were in such a positive state. And I think, like, people listen to this and think, oh, he's fanboying over Microsoft, but, like, Blizzard and Activision have been in such a bad place for a long time due to things that's happened over there with the developers and, Bobby Kotick not doing anything about it. Developers being pushed to only make Call of Duty, developers not being able to do what they want, and now like Microsoft is apparently the best place to work in the US, and you have all these new developers that are technically going to be working under Microsoft just with the the Activision name tied to it, and it opens up so many possibilities. There's like 20 teams making Call of Duty content in a time where, look, we do not need a new Call of Duty game every year. We really don't. And we weren't really going to get a Call of Duty every year. So this year, we were going to get Modern Warfare 2 DLC. It was going to be a premium expansion. And it's so obvious that they went to change it to a full retail game just by how you access the game. So the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 beta, you play through Modern Warfare 2's menu. It wasn't even its own tile on the store. In the code, it's called Modern Warfare 2, right? So, like, it was blatantly going to be this premium expansion where you have access to Modern Warfare 2 maps, a new campaign and zombies mode, but last minute they're like, hey, we can charge full £70 for this. Slap it in a new box, and it's basically the same game in the same bloody menu. And I think with Microsoft, we're not going to have Call of Duty every year. We're going to have Call of Duty and then a premium expansion release like the next year, like what they were going to do this year. And you won't have 20 Call of Duty teams, right? Like should Raven Software or High Moon Studios be making Call of Duty content? No, they should be making new cool games. And I think that's the biggest thing right now. We could see these games from them again. We could see, I always talk about this, Singularity 2 or a new Transformers game, just exciting new games. Because if you look at Activision, we get one game from them a year, Call of Duty, and then maybe a Blizzard game, maybe an Overwatch or a Diablo, but it's mainly Call of Duty. When if you look back 10, 12 years ago, we were getting so many games from Activision a year. We're getting a bunch of licensed games, getting a bunch of platformers, and now it's just Call of Duty, and we can get back to that. And I think that's the exciting thing. And Call of Duty fans, I've noticed, I think Call of Duty fans are getting sick of the whole 1 year rotation thing. Like one of my friends who I know will be listening, like he was annoyed that like you get a new Call of Duty game in, let's say, November, and you start playing that game. You get all the battle passes, and then when the next November rolls around, you get a new Call of Duty game where your cosmetics don't transfer over, and you basically leave your old game behind with the old maps. Like, a new map pack or a new bunch of maps came to Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 a few weeks ago, but people are going to basically be moving straight over to Modern Warfare 3 with none of the maps transferring over. That's crazy. Like, if you really think about it, in an age where these multiplayer games last years now, but Call of Duty's main multiplayer mode just gets completely refreshed every year, where you can't play the old maps and you don't carry over your skins. And I think as a business model, Call of Duty can change for the better, and we won't be forced to buy a brand new game every year and leave everything behind. And that's exciting to me. Like, Logan, are you on the same wavelength when it comes to Call of Duty? Because it seems like the yearly Call of Duty thing will finally be going away.
Honestly, I think getting rid of the yearly Call of Duty will be one of the better things for it, because it will allow them to extend the life cycle of each game, allow there to be more enjoyment and more, excuse me, kind of allergies, content and, creation and, just enjoyment for these titles. They can make them more in depth. They can have more modes. They can, flesh them out a little bit, maybe have longer campaigns and higher quality and polish and features, and just make them a Zenith experience like it used to be. Like, when the original Modern Warfare trilogy would come out, like a game would come out and then a while later the next one would come out. Those were huge, monumental blockbuster events, and Call of Duty launches still are huge, but it feels different when it's just every single year. It's like the sports and like FIFA and NBA 2K and Madden and gaming. Like, should they really have to make us buy a new version every single year and instead of just have one version for or two versions for a generation, and then you pay a little bit and you get updated rosters and features and graphics, but instead they gouge you and drain you like a vampire, like bleed you dry for $70 every single year for a few more sweat glands and shoes. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before, like sports games and stuff. Like, I think like the whole yearly thing just needs to end. Like, don't get me wrong. I think Call of Duty content creators will still have a lot to talk about. Call of Duty as a yearly thing when it comes to new content will always be a thing. But you do not need a new $70 game on the shelf every year. You just don't. Like, there's been a new Call of Duty game every year since 2005. That's crazy. Right? like that shouldn't be realistic. And like Call of Duty games, they are high in quality. People can diss them all day, but I've been going through Modern Warfare 2's campaign, and like the cinematics are crazy. The gameplay is good. The mission design in Modern Warfare 2 is actually really good. Outside of the last level, which I think is atrocious, but the game itself superb. But we don't need a new one every year. Like, how do you explain that? Hey, a development studio that made beloved Transformers games make multiplayer maps now for Call of Duty. That blows my mind. Like, that shouldn't be a thing. And I think like people have been fearmongering for the past 20 months, but the truth is, it's like it's going to benefit people. Games still going to PlayStation. It's also going to be on Switch and a bunch of different streaming services, and people in the end are going to get more games. And like, look, let's say maybe a Singularity 2 does happen. Do I think that will be on PlayStation? Not particularly. I think those games will be exclusive. And, we'll go straight into this before we close out the show. Satya Nadella came out and said that Microsoft's going to double down on gaming. Now, if you look at how much they just bought Activision for, what does that even mean? Like, how do you invest even more in Xbox?
No duh.
Yeah, like they're going to buy everyone now. But I think the realistic thing is like people are saying, oh, they're going to buy Sega next, or this other publisher. I don't think Microsoft's going to buy another publisher. I think them doubling down is kind of related to that Sphere thing in Las Vegas. Like, they are going all out with gaming, right? I'll be honest. I think Xbox is a great platform. They have great games. But when it comes to marketing, they just don't market their own product. I never used to see adverts for Xbox Series consoles on TV. They don't advertise what the console does on the advert. Like, the trailer for Xbox Series X and S does not mention backwards compatibility. I've mentioned this before. And I say that Vegas thing, and it's like that thing costs like I think I read somewhere it's like $500,000 for a day. And that's a lot of money for a marketing department to blow on just like one day of like a dome. And like I think when he says that, I don't hear, hey, we're gonna put out, we're gonna buy like five more like publishers and all that stuff. But I think Microsoft's gonna be more refined. They're gonna actually market more because in some territories, Microsoft doesn't market Xbox at all. They've mentioned that they want to go all in with Japanese support in the future. Square Enix is working more with Microsoft now. And I just see Microsoft putting that money towards becoming more of a global brand rather than being a US and UK brand, right? Like, Microsoft puts money into US, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, UK, and that's pretty much it. Australia as well. But outside of that, like, it's just PlayStation, right? Microsoft, to be bigger than they are now for Xbox, they need to become a worldwide brand, not just, some of the West. And that's how I took it. Anyway, Logan, how did you take that?
Well, to me, it's kind of a long-winded answer, but like when I first hear they're doubling down on gaming, it's kind of like no dip, Sherlock. You spent $70 billion. You wouldn't just do that on some whim or flight of fancy on something you weren't serious about. And so the fact also that you spent I would love to just see a financial sheet that said, how much their legal costs were for the past 20 months. Because I would almost bet that they would probably be the GDP of a small country. It was not cheap labor exercise they just went through. And so they are all in on that. And they were already all in before. Now they're just doubling down even more. And I'm a little bit different on the publisher acquisitions thing. Like they said before, even during this process, that they weren't done acquiring. I personally don't think they're going to go for anything even remotely close to the size of Activision again. Something like an EA or something. I just don't see that happening or them having a desire to. I do think, like you said, that global is their biggest thing. Like they've got West down, like Western Hemisphere, and then they have a good presence in Europe and the UK. But, there, believe it or not, there are other parts of the world as well that matter significantly in gaming. And Japan is an area they are really lacking in. But, another thing that's, people forget is Japan isn't the only Asian market that matters. There are other ones as well. And Korea, for example, has a thriving gaming economy. StarCraft, which we've talked about before, is like a national sport basically in Korea. So now you have that franchise under your belt. Imagine getting some studios over there to cultivate and develop. Like, I think they will make one more notable purchase of either a publisher or a handful of noteworthy studios before they're done. Like, nothing on an EA level or anything, or Ubisoft, but I think they are gonna. I don't think they're done, but I think they're gonna be more careful about, in particular, about what they get.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's more places in Asia other than outside of Japan. Like, there's a lot of games and a lot of gamers out there that could be sold on an Xbox, and like the more people that are playing Xbox in Asia, the more that there's a higher chance of games basically. But like, there's a lot of people that have messaged me like, Microsoft doesn't market in their country, and like that is a big issue. During the 360 generation, Xbox was everywhere. But if you lived in Europe, like outside of the UK and maybe Spain and France, like Xbox wasn't really like big at all, despite how big the 360 was. And I think they just need to try more in more countries because they have the games, they have the talent, they have the franchises, and I think marketing Call of Duty going forward will be big for them. And yeah, I think Microsoft will get the job done. It may take time, but they need to be a worldwide brand. Anyway, before we close out the show, I just want to say that HellBlade 2 was mentioned during the whole, I should say, shown during the Xbox Dome thing in Vegas. And that seemed a bit weird how they featured, Forza, Starfield, and HellBlade, which comes out next year. Like, that was a bit weird that they were showing that. And I've theorized for a while that, HellBlade was shown off in 2019 during the Game Awards. And then it was shown off again in 2021 with gameplay, right, during the Game Awards. And they said the game comes out in 2024. So I 1,000% believe that the game will release in the first, let's say, quarter of 2024, and we're gonna get a full-on release date at the Game Awards. Like that's just, I think the stars are aligned. To me, it looks that way. Considering they've showed the game there multiple times, and just marketing that during the Vegas Dome thing, to me that tells me the game isn't that far away. Again, I think it releases by March. What do you think, Logan? Because it was a bit weird how HellBlade was just randomly there.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty noteworthy as well because they focused on recent titles and releases like Starfield, obviously, Forza, obviously, and then they throw out Hellblade too, and you're like, wait a minute, we haven't had a firm release date on that yet. And then, there were some Q&As and Xbox Wire and stuff where they talked about some of the choices and why they chose titles. And for Hellblade 2, they talked about, we thought a photorealistic, like really attention grabbing title would make sense to throw in there with the other ones. So they did that. Part of me thinks that's accurate, and part of me thinks that's just PR spin. But the fact that it was included and that we keep getting more and more little drip feeds of information from Ninja Theory lately, I do think it comes out next year. I really do. It's time.
Yeah, I mean, they said 2024 in the last trailer, but like that could be any time. But like featuring it then at the Vegas thing, and the Game Awards is just around the corner. Yeah, I think it's going to be there. But yeah, Logan, have you got anything else to say before we close out the show?
No, just life is great and enjoy gaming.
Yeah, I mean, we do have some other topics left, but as I've said for the past week, I've been really sick. I've had a chest infection. In fact, I've found it very hard to breathe sometimes. Thankfully, I'm on the tail end of it. Unfortunately, my ribs hurt every time I move or cough, but that happens. But anyway, we probably would have went over the 2 hours we normally do, but again, I really can't breathe at the minute. My latest video went out last night. It's Most Wanted Games by Activision for backwards compatibility, because I do think we will see every single one of those games backwards compatible. There's been rumors that Microsoft will actually add more games to the backwards compatibility program, and it wouldn't surprise me, and we may not have to wait that long. But again, the video is in the description down below. It's been fun making that. Took a while. Again, trying to make a cohesive piece of content when your ribs hurt and your lungs hurt. Bit difficult, not gonna lie. But again, people seem to like the video. Again, it's in the description down below. The support's really appreciated. We will be back next week. And no, it's not COVID, by the way. It's just a really bad chest infection. 4 weeks, by the way. Bloody long time for a chest infection. But anyway, we should be back next week. I should have another video out by the end of the week. That's right, 2 videos in 1 week as well as a podcast. Things are changing. I have some really cool things planned for the channel, especially some on-camera stuff. I'm eventually, maybe by the end of the year, early 2024, I'm start going to be doing on-camera content. So you're going to be getting multiple videos a week. And yeah, I've got some really cool stuff planned. Stuff I can't wait to talk about. Anyway, our social things are in the description down below for Twitter. Again, we'll be back next week. Everyone in chat has been awesome this week. There's been no, fanboys in chat arguing like we did last week. But anyway, back next week. Please share all that stuff. It's appreciated. A video should be out either tomorrow or Friday after the Xbox show. Anyway, we're out. Peace, everybody. And we're